The Treasurer has rejected calls to abolish the luxury car tax in the wake of Holden's demise. For more on this, joining us live is Richard Dudley. He's the Chief Executive of the Motor Trades Association of Australia. Richard, appreciate your time. Thank you. When you look at this tax raising some $675 million for the government, you can see why Josh Frydenberg's reluctant to give it up.
Oh, look, we're pragmatic about this issue. We recognise the impact it would have on the budget. But seriously, the time has come to actually, let's have a discussion about what an alternative might look like. We believe that there is a 4R strategy that could be looked at if they're not willing to actually look at its complete abolition. That would be to actually raise the threshold to something that's more meaningful and truly luxury-orientated. We believe reducing the actual tax rate itself, the removal of accessories, which actually pushes many vehicles above the actual luxury tax car threshold, and to actually redefine and reform what the luxury tax is. Remove the word car.
Well, let's just have a look at those ideas a bit more closely. In terms of raising the threshold, what level do you think would be ideal?
Well, our position is that there is no ideal level. We'd actually like to see the abolition of the luxury car tax. Many reviews, many investigations,
proposal.
but under this compromise, let's have a discussion and come up with something that allows the government to still have the revenue it requires to try and maintain a surplus, given the other pressures that it's facing at the moment. But also, let's take a look at whether it should be on a sliding scale, whether it should be back down in the single digits. Let's have a discussion about that.
So with this compromise proposal, though, what number figure would you put on it? What dollar figure would you put on a new threshold?
Well, it's currently 33%. We consider that to be too high. It should be down around the 20s as a first start and then reduce it down. Some of that revenue could be offset by the inclusion of other actual luxury items which most Australians would regard as luxurious. Things such as high-end boats, cruises, planes, things that are done in that regard, particular artwork, watches that are worth $20,000, $30,000. You know, if you're going to define what luxury is, then let's have a luxury tax, but not necessarily single out the automotive industry, which is struggling, as we all know, with a number of other issues at the moment.
What do you make of this idea floated by Matt Canavan today, the Nationals MP, of making farmers exempt from the luxury car tax? His argument is that they often need to buy vehicles above that threshold in order to operate their businesses.
Absolutely, but the government has been forthcoming with initiatives, including the instant asset write-off. We're seeking, as part of the budget submissions for this year, to actually make that permanent rather than a budget-to-budget type scenario. Those sorts of things should be entertained as part of a debate. This notion that we can continue just simply to say no. We get that the government, irrespective of the colour of the political party in office, we get that a $675 multi-million dollar hit on revenue is something that you just can't simply overlook. But to simply say, no, we're not even going to entertain what this should look like in the future or how the revenue shortfall might be able to be offset, we believe that that should be the opening up of a debate.
Yeah, Labor doesn't seem to be embracing this idea of dumping it either at this stage. Aside from the actual benefit of cheaper cars for individual consumers if the tax was dumped, what other consequences could there be in terms of actually having a better quality of fleet of cars here in Australia?
Well, you could argue that because of the luxury car tax impost, consumers may avoid actually choosing to have safer vehicles that are fitted with the latest technology, and by reducing or removing altogether the luxury car tax, those come back into play. And it means that the national vehicle fleet, which is fast approaching 20 million vehicles in the passenger and light commercial area, we may have consumers actually actively looking at that. Now, given the events of the last 48 hours and the impact on over 8,000 Australians who work in Holden dealerships around the country, these are the sorts of issues that we think are now very firmly on the agenda and they should be looked at.
New car sales were down, I understand, significantly last year. Why was that, Richard? Do we know?
It's a combination of many factors. Obviously, people will hold on to their vehicles and not renew vehicles at a time of economic hardship. We are going through a severe drought There have been other impacts in terms of pressures on small business, etc. These issues actually combine to sort of put back at the replacement of vehicle. That has knock-on effects. For example, the national fleet, the age of that national fleet on average has now gone to around 10.2 years, which is a lift from where it has been around the 10-year-old mark. And these are the outcomes of what people will do when they're going to hold on to their existing vehicle as opposed to updating or renewing.
What about the idea that's been flagged for an exemption of electric cars? Is that something you'd like the government to consider? Because there is this view in some quarters that the government needs to support electric vehicles a lot more here in Australia. We've seen China, the UK, other nations really be very optimistic about uptake targets. Australia seems to be lagging on that front.
We don't believe there should be subsidies per se. Let the market decide. We have an influx of new vehicles coming every year with differing powertrains. We have the emergence of hydrogen-propelled vehicles. We have the emergence of hybrid. We have the emergence of full electric. People will make their decisions in terms of what suits them at the time they're wishing to renew or purchase a new vehicle. You cannot actually provide incentives to buy one vehicle over another when you actually haven't decided to have a look at the entire taxation regime which applies to the automotive sector.